They thought we were ghosts, until our guns spoke for us. Cole Mercer's first memory was silence. The silence of drifting wreckage, frozen bodies clinging to the last scraps of Earth's glory. He'd been 5 when the Kelleran Armada broke through Mars' defense and gutted the Terran fleet like fish on black ice. Since then, all he'd known was exile and the rumor of one last human warship that vanished before surrender was ever spoken. He was 26 now, if the star maps were honest, staring through the cracked viewport of the carrier Ashfall. He watched radiation storms dance across what used to be Earth's cradle. The blue planet was gone, boiled to dust by orbital bombardment and Kelleran fire. What floated here now were gravestones with no names. Cole. The voice broke the static in his earpiece, deep, ragged, like stone dragged through iron. Commander Thorne, the last soldier from the old world. Report. Cole didn't flinch. He never did. Outer ring sealed. No new patrols. But they're tightening the net. They know someone's out here. Let them know. Thorne growled. They've forgotten what fear feels like. The Ashfall was no fleet carrier anymore. Just a drifting coffin, patched together with stolen alien alloys and old Terran steel, below Cole's boots. The decks hummed with desperate life, engineers welding breech plates, children learning. 2-aim rifles they'd never grow big enough to carry, humanity's last flame, flickering in the dark. He keyed the hatch open and dropped into the reactor corridor, a long, echoing spine of rusted bulkheads and flickering floodlights. There, by the fusion banks, Alara Kent knelt with an old plasma torch. Sparks rained off her sleeve, illuminating a face more bone than skin. Her hair was tied back tight, eyes locked on her work, getting ancient fuel rods for anything that still burned. Alara, Cole said softly. She didn't look up. Tell Thorne it's hopeless yet? Cole leaned against the bulkhead. Not yet. He still believes in ghosts. She paused, finally meeting his eyes for a heartbeat. He saw it. The girl she'd once been, Academy medalist, orbital engineer, future of the fleet, before the siege, before she wired bombs into the walls of her own cities just to slow the Kelleran advance. They think they broke us, she murmured, but they never found the Argus. Cole. If even half the rumors are true, they're not, he said. Quickly, he wanted to believe, too, the myth of Earth's last dreadnought, slipstreaming through the black, a warship with teeth sharp enough to shred an armada. But in 20 years, no beacon, no signal, no sign, just human whispers clinging to a ghost. Alara stood, wiping sweat from her brow with a gloved hand. Her eyes softened when they landed on him, not with warmth, but with something older, harder. If we're ghosts, Mercer, let's haunt them properly. Before he could answer, the klaxons howled, an ugly shriek that rattled bulkheads and made the floor shiver. The lights flickered red on every deck. Footsteps pounded. The young, the old, the broken, the last sons and daughters of Earth running to their stations. Doc Cole snapped his helmet on. How close to close? Alara flicked her wrist console. A blue holomap spun between them. Dots of cold Kelleran signatures weaving through. The outer rings, predator drones, troop carriers, boarding pods, a hunter's net, closing on prey. Thorne's voice cracked through the intercom. All hands, tactical blackout. No signals, no heat. Prepare for silent drift. Cole stared at the holomap, the cold bite of reality settling in his chest. If they found Ashfall, they wouldn't take prisoners. The Kelleran didn't waste air on defiance. He turned to Alara, searching her face for any shred of doubt, but all he saw was the same steel that had kept him alive since he was 15. We can't run forever, he said. She slipped a small black case into his hand, ancient, battered. When he cracked it open, he saw what lay inside, a single, ancient data drive, marked with an emblem no Kelleran drone had ever decoded, a stylized eye, carved into Terran alloy. The mark of the Argus. Alara's voice was a whisper that filled the corridor like thunder. They thought they erased our fleet, but maybe the fleet didn't die. Cole's eyes flicked to the viewport behind her, where Earth's dead ring glowed faint. Under drifting storms of cosmic fire, a rumor, a hope, or maybe humanity's last, terrible secret. And in the void, beyond, something stirred, an energy spike far out, hidden beneath the cold noise of space. A new signal, not Kelleran, not human, something ancient, something waking up. Asterisk, the silence that followed the signal spike was worse than any alarm. Cole Mercer stared at the flickering data stream on Alara's wrist console. Lines of corrupted code, static bursts, phantom echoes that made the reactor corridor feel smaller, colder. "It's an echo," Cole whispered. "It has to be." Alara didn't answer. Her eyes flicked through the data like she could will the truth out of the noise. But there it was, a pulse buried in the hiss, low and steady, like a heartbeat. And hidden inside it, a ping no Kelleran frequency used a Terran ping, the overhead. Lights snapped to red again. Bulkheads trembled as the Ashfall's ancient drives coughed to life, fighting for power they barely had. Somewhere down the spine of the carrier, humans scrambled to man rusted turrets, primed old torpedoes that might misfire or not fire at all. This ship was more gray than gun now, but they'd squeeze every round from her before they let the Kelleran claim her bones. Thorne's voice cut through the dread. "Mercer, Ken, report to command." Now, they ran down rusted ladders, past families pressed against cold bulkheads, mothers shushing children who didn't understand why the lights were dying, why the ship shuddered under its own heartbeat, old men handing out rifles that could barely lift. Ghosts, Cole thought, ghosts wearing human skin, clinging to a war they should have lost a century ago. The command hub was a cramped dome at the carrier's fractured bow, half the consoles blacked out, the rest flickering with dying power. At its heart stood Commander Thorne, a mountain of a man in battered combat armor older than Cole himself. His face was a map of old scars and fresh burns, eyes sunken deep behind a metal visor he never removed. He turned when they entered, his gravel voice filling the dome. "You saw it." "Yes, sir," Alara said, voice steady. "It's Terran. Or, it's pretending to be." Thorne's eyes narrowed. He stabbed a finger at the main display, a star chart with a single pulsing dot drifting just outside the asteroid graveyard that used to be Earth's defense line. 20 years. Thorne growled. 20 damn years, not a whisper. And now, when we're cornered, Cole stepped closer, studying the dot. It was moving, drifting along the debris field, using the wreckage for cover. Smart. Too smart for a ghost. Too quiet for a living. Terran ship, unless it's bait, Cole said flatly. They know we chase a rumor. Thorne's fist slammed into the console, sending sparks across the room. Or it's what we bled for. Mercer, what Earth hid before they broke? Her spine. You ever wonder why they cracked the planet instead of taking it intact? They feared something under the ice, something too big to fight head on. Alara's voice was low, like a prayer. The Argus, outside the cracked viewport, the debris, drifted like a graveyard tide. Cole could almost see them, the ghosts of old battleships, orbital stations, mining rigs ripped apart by plasma lances. Somewhere in that drifting metal, a secret waited, or a lie, before he could speak. The lights flickered, then died completely. Emergency strips buzzed to life in cold blue lines, casting everyone in spectral half-shadows. Then the alarm screamed. Again. Closer this time. Internal sensors, not external. Cole spun to Thorne. They're inside. Thorne didn't flinch. Borders. Cole's breath caught. Kelleran kill teams, hybrid shock troopers bred for one thing, getting human. Survivors ship by ship, corridor by corridor. Thorne barked orders before the dread could root to deep. Ken, lock reactor 2. Rig it for overload if they push aft. Mercer, with me. We hold the central artery. Alara didn't argue. She squeezed Cole's wrist once. The warmth of that brief touch stronger than any goodbye. Then she was gone, boots pounding into the dark, carrying humanity's last dream in a battered data drive. Thorne clapped Cole's shoulder, hard enough to remind him of every bruise he'd earned under this man's command. You still believe it's out there? Thorne asked, voice low. Cole met his eyes through the visor. If it is, it's the only thing that scares them. The corridors were alive with flickering lights and the hiss of recycled air. Somewhere, up ahead, the bulkheads groaned, an echo that made the hair on Cole's neck rise. He raised his battered plasma carbine, its power cell blinking red. Thorne lifted a relic of the old war, a Gauss shotgun older than Cole's father. Each shell hand-forged by children who would never see the sky. Together, they pressed into the artery corridor, a long, narrow kill zone lit only by sparks dancing from overloaded conduits. Then he saw them, flickers in the dark, shapes shifting in and out of the smoke. Kelleran borders, 7 feet tall, bone-white exosuites, eyes burning with that hateful, insectoid glow. They moved like liquid metal, hissing orders in a tongue humans weren't meant to understand. Cole steadied his rifle. Thorn braced the shotgun, the last defenders of a broken fleet, facing down the death that had stalked them since the skyfall. Remember who we are, Thorn growled. If this is our last breath, make it hurt. Cole's finger tensed on the trigger. Behind the enemy, deeper in the drifting graveyard, that lone pulse kept beating down a tearing heartbeat, or bait. He didn't care anymore. The corridor exploded in light and heat. Cole Mercer squeezed the trigger, plasma bolts stuttering out in a desperate blue arc. Beside him, Commander Thorn's Gauss shotgun roared, every shot punching through the armored chitin of the first Kelleran trooper, then the second. Sparks danced on the bulkheads. The asphalt shuddered like a wounded animal. One of the Kelleran lunged, faster than anything that size had a right to move. Cole dropped to one knee, sighted down his flickering scope, and fired point blank. The bolt hit the alien under its jaw, blew out the back of his skull in a burst of sickly white ichor. The thing collapsed, limbs spasming like dying wires. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then the next wave came. A dozen shapes emerged from the flickering shadows, bone-plated war forms, jointed blades humming with sick green light. They moved in perfect unity, a living storm. Kelleran killbreeds had no words for mercy. They didn't need them. Cole braced himself, ready to die standing. Thorn shifted to reload, but the old shotgun clicked empty. Thorn bared his teeth under the visor, half a grin. Always wanted to see hell up close. Cole fired again, but his carbine sputtered. Dead cell, no charge left. He swung the stock like a club, driving it into the first Kelleran that breached the line. It didn't fall. Clawed arms wrapped around him, cold and wet, pushing him back against the bulkhead. Then the shadows behind the enemy bloomed with light, a blinding, ragged arc. For a moment Cole thought the ship was breaching. Then he heard the roar. Old plasma cutters. Turn to weapons. ELA or Akin. She burst from a side corridor with a crew of engineers behind her. Half-starved kids, old techs in oil-stained jumpsuits, all wielding tools turned into death. Sparks flew as plasma torches sliced through Kelleran armor. Hissing steel cracked insectoid plating. A boy no older than 16 drove a fusion crowbar through a trooper's neck joint. Humanity's last line. Not soldiers, but the desperate and the stubborn. Cole wrenched himself free, grabbed the falling carbine, swung it at another Kelleran's head. Bone cracked. Thorn bellowed a war cry that echoed off the corridor walls. The kill team faltered for the first time, hesitating, unsure how a dying species could still bite so deep. Alara appeared at Cole's shoulder, welding torch sputtering red hot. Her eyes burned brighter than a flame. I told you, Mercer, we haunt them. Cole's breath tore in his chest. They'll send more. Let them, she spat. We're not done yet. Thorn kicked the last corpse free and turned to the ragged survivors. Secure the artery, weld every hatch. If they breach, bleed them for every inch. The young fighter scrambled to obey. Cole grabbed Alara's arm. What about the signal? She wiped blood from her face with the back of her sleeve. I traced it while we fought. It's moving, Cole. It's not debris. It's staring through the wreck field. Then it's real. He felt the words lodge deep in his bones, heavier than any weapon he'd ever carried. She nodded, breath ragged. If it's the Argus, we have one shot. If it's bait, we're dead either way. Thorn strode over, visor spattered with alien ichor. What's the play? Cole looked between them. Thorn, the old hammer. Alara, the flame that refused to gut her out. And him, the nobody. The orphan who'd grown up believing Earth was just ash and lies. Thorn, if we stay here, they'll gut Ashfall room by room. But if that signal's real, he pointed to the star map flickering above the ruined console. It's drifting toward the black halo, the old orbital mines. If it's hiding there, it's waiting for us to find it. Thorn's voice was granted that we take the asphalt through. We show them humanity's last fist. Cole shook his head. We can't drag the whole carrier. We'll never make the gap. The Kelleran will cut us off before we breach orbit. Alara stepped closer. That we don't take the whole ship. The word settled like dust in a grave. The idea they'd all refused to say aloud. Until now, a sudden hush fell over the corridor. Even the wounded, even the children, seemed to hear it. Thorn's lips curled behind the visor. A strike run. Cole nodded. Cut loose the Bastion module. The old destroyer deck. It's still rigged for independent ops. Enough thrusters to push through the wreck field. Enough teeth to bite back. Alara touched the battered data drive at her hip And if the Argus is real, we hand her the match. Light the dark. Thorn slammed a fist against Cole's chest plate. Not gentle, not cruel, just final. I'll hold Ashfall long enough for you to break orbit. Make them bleed for every deck. Cole felt the weight settle on his shoulders. The choice, the chance, the spark, maybe the last he'd ever carry. Then let's make them remember, he said. Behind them, the surviving crew scrambled to prepare. Old engines stirred to life. Hatches slammed shut. The ghosts of Earth gathered at the edge of extinction, whispering a single word across the dying ship, resist. Cole looked once more at the drifting graveyard through the cracked viewport, at the hidden heartbeat pulsing in the dark. If it was a trap, so be it. If it was hope, then maybe the stars would know their names again. The Bastion module shuddered as ancient clamps released, one by one, like brittle bones snapping free. Cole Mercer felt each vibration through the deck plating. Every bolt popping loose was another chain cut from Earth's last hope. Through the forward viewport, the graveyard loomed, drifting carcasses of Earth's lost fleet, chunks of shattered orbital colonies and frozen skeletons turning slowly in the void. Somewhere out there, hidden behind the dead, pulsed the heartbeat of a ghost warship, or a lie so perfect it deserved to be true. Alara Ken's hands danced across the Bastion's flickering control panel. Sparks jumped from cracked wires as she rerouted what little power they had to the maneuvering thrusters. A reactor meant for an entire destroyer deck now powered only a single spine of rusted metal and half-buried gun batteries, main lines green. She murmured, life support stable for a few hours. Cole forced a smile, more than we'll need. Behind them, the deck hatch hissed open. Thor stepped inside, armor scarred fresh from boarding skirmishes. Blood streaked down one vambrace. Some was his, more wasn't. Outer rings folding inward, Thorn rasped. His visor was cracked. A sliver of his left eye gleamed through. Keller and Kill Swarms are boarding the Ashfall's aft decks. You have one shot. Cole met his commander's eyes. He saw no fear there, just a grim acceptance. Like a father watching his son walk into the storm he'd spent a lifetime preparing him for. Hold them as long as you can, Cole said. Thorn stepped forward, rested a heavy gauntlet on Cole's shoulder. I've held this line since the orbital siege. I'll hold it till the last bolt burns. He leaned closer, lowering his voice so only Cole heard. Don't waste this. Cole nodded. There was nothing left to say. Words were ashes now. A rumble echoed through the hull, distant but growing closer. Alara checked the side feed, and her breath caught on the grainy holo. The Kelleran fleet shifted position, several kill ships, bone-white with crackling green. Cores detached from the main cordon and moved toward the drifting graveyard. They know. She whispered. Cole's jaw tightened. They know the signal's real, or they want us to believe it's real. He thought, but the thought didn't matter anymore. They were committed, all of them. On the command deck, Thorn turned to leave, but paused at the hatch. His voice cut through the Bastion's failing hum like iron scraping stone. When you see her, if you see her, tell her we never surrendered. Then he was gone a moment later. The hatch sealed shut, Thorn's final gift, keeping the Bastion module sealed, so the breakaway burn wouldn't gut Ashfall's fragile spine. Alara turned to Cole. Her hair clung to her forehead in sweat-soaked strands. She looked so young in that moment, stripped to the fire and steel. Are you ready for this? She asked. He almost laughed. Instead, he reached out, brushing a streak of oil from her cheek. No, he said honestly, but we're here anyway. A voice crackled through the battered comms, Thorn's last broadcast. Bastion, you are clear for breakaway burn. Go make ghosts real. Cole settled into the pilot harness, the cracked seat protesting under his armored weight. Alara strapped herself beside him, fingers flying across the ignition keys. The engines coughed, then roared. The Bastion module lurched forward, inertial dampeners flickering on and off, making the deck groan under sudden acceleration. Cole's vision blurred at the edges as G-forces pressed him back. Outside the viewport, the Ashfall fell behind, a drifting shadow being swarmed by Kelleran. Boarding pods. Plasma flashes lit the carrier's spine as Thorn's defenders fought room by room, deck by deck, and the Bastion punched through the graveyard, toward the unknown. Through the wreckage they weaved, rusted supercarriers drifting like dead, Leviathans, old orbital cannons still locked in their final firing arcs. Hull fragments turned to shrapnel against the Bastion's scarred armor. Cole swerved around a floating tower of twisted solar rays. the bastion's belly scraping sparks from ancient debris. Then the graveyard opened, revealing the black halo, a shattered ring of mining rigs and asteroid clusters, half swallowed by drifting ice. In the middle of that frozen chaos, the signal, still pulsing, still moving. Alara's console flared an angry red, multiple Kelleran intercepts, 3 kill ships, vectoring straight at us. Cole's knuckles whitened on the manual thrusters. How long? 2 minutes, she said, voice tight. Cole glanced at her. Seeing the flicker of doubt she tried to hide. Alara, if you want to bail, she slammed a fist onto the console, cutting him off. I didn't crawl through 20 years of corpses to die running. If we light this spark, maybe Earth won't be a memory. He breathed it in, the resolve, the raw stubbornness that had kept her welding bombs into bulkheads. When hope was nothing but vapor, humanity's last strength wasn't steel or guns. It was this. All right, he said, voice calm as the grave. Let's wake her up. The bastion's final torpedo tube spun online, ancient, half-seized. Alara keyed in the coordinates for the drifting signal. Target locked, she whispered. Cole braced. Outside the viewport, the first Kelleran kill ship cut through the dark, a bone serpent glowing with alien light. They were out of time. Cole exhaled, thumb hovering over the fire key. If this is our last shot, he muttered, let's make the galaxy remember our name. He fired. The torpedo streaked into the void, trailing plasma, a spear thrown from the bones of a dying world. Behind them, the kill ship screamed closer. The heartbeat in the dark flickered. Then, it answered. The torpedo's wake vanished into the drifting ruin of the black halo. For a breathless instant, there was only silence, a dead calm broken by the soft, dreadful hum of approaching kill ships. Cole Mercer felt the bastion's battered frame tremble as Alara rerouted every last drop of reactor power to the forward thrusters. Ahead, the graveyard seemed to swallow their last hope whole. Then the dark bloomed with light. It wasn't the cold white of a detonation or the green glow of Kelleran drives. It was a deep, bruised gold, like a sunrise glimpsed through poisoned skies. The drifting ice around the black halo cracked in sheets, blown outward by a pulse that rippled through vacuum like a heartbeat made visible. Cole leaned forward, breath locked in his throat. Is that? Alara began, but her words died as the graveyard itself shifted. From behind a drifting ridge of shattered mining rigs, a shape emerged, vast, predatory, beautiful in a way only human war machines ever were, all angular armor and jagged hull, plating, prow bristling with spinal lances older than the war itself. At its core burned the stylized eye, the mark every Terran child learned to curse, or pray to. The lost dreadnought Argus Dot, it glided forward, shedding the ice and wreckage that had hidden it for decades. Armor plates unfolded like steel wings. Its engines came alive with a low, thunderous rumble, not a modern hum, but a deep fusion growl that made Cole's bones ache. Alara exhaled a ragged laugh. Holy stars, it's real. A new voice crackled through the bastion's half-broken COMMS layered in static, old protocols speaking in ghost code. Terran asset identified. Tactical override accepted. Standby for battle integration. Cole stared at Alara. Battle integration? Before she could answer, the bastion's consoles flickered, old systems flaring alive as encrypted handshakes poured between their module and Argus. Targeting data, hull schematics, emergency power links, the bastion's failing guns blinked green for the first time in decades. Alara's eyes darted over the flood of new data. It's pulling our systems into its command net, using us as a forward tooth. A flicker of disbelief passed through Cole's mind, but it was gone before it could root. The Kelleran had spent 20 years trying to erase Earth's teeth. Now, one had survived long enough to grow fangs again. Outside the viewport, the kill ships closed fast, bone serpents angling to cut the bastion in half before it could dock. With the Argus, plasma lances flared in the dark, streaking past the bastion's flanks. One shot grazed the portside armor. The entire module shuddered, bulkheads splitting under the force. Helm offline. Alara snapped. Sparks showered her console as she fought to keep the attitude thrusters alive. Manual override only. Can you fly this crate by hand? Cole's hands locked onto the stick. Watch me. The kill ship swept closer, pincers open, a net of green fire closing around the last ember of Terran defiance. Cole jammed the thrusters, sending the bastion into a corkscrew roll between drifting slabs of shattered hull. Alien plasma sizzled through the dark, missing them by meters in the distance. The Argus turned its prow, and for the first time, Cole understood why the Kelleran had broken Earth. Instead of conquering her, turrets unfolded along the dreadnoughts. Flanks, old siege cannons that had slept for decades. One by one, they spat fury into the dark. Beams of coherent fusion energy carved through the void. Severing the lead kill ship at the midsection, its halves drifted past the bastion in silence, burning from the inside out. Another kill ship veered aside, trying to circle behind. Cole slammed the bastion's nose around, a maneuver that should have cracked the spine of any sane ship. Alarms shrieked. The deck bucked under his boots. He saw the alien's pincer sweep past the viewport, then the bastion's starboard. Guns, reactivated by the Argus, barked in answer. The alien vessel ruptured in a blossom of sickly green and black, but more signatures flooded the scope, not 3, but dozens. The Kelleran were sending everything now, a swarm of kill ships, boarding pods, carrier lances. Thorne's final transmission came through the static, gunfire in the background, his voice a ragged snarl. Cole, they're cutting through the Ashfall's core. You must break clear, now. Cole felt the weight hammer into his chest. The bastion couldn't dock fast enough. They'd have to reach the Argus or die in its shadow. He looked at Alara, saw the same fire burning in her eyes that had brought them this far. Get the data drive ready, he said. This ship needs its heart. She pulled the battered drive from her jacket. The last scrap of Earth's old codes, the seed the Argus needed to unlock its final targeting arrays. The one secret they'd traded a century of blood to keep hidden. Alara's voice shook as she clutched it. We don't have a docking tube left. Cole pointed to the viewport. The Argus loomed ahead, vast and hungry. We don't need one. Realization hit her, and her eyes widened. You're going to ram us into the breach. Cole's grin was savage. If this crate breaks apart, let's make it count. The Argus' massive forward bay cracked open like a waiting mouth in the void. The bastion, little more than rust and hope, roared toward it. Kelleran kill ships spiraled behind them. Claws outstretched. If they missed, they'd die forgotten. If they made it, they'd wake a ghost that could scare a galaxy. Cole leaned forward, voice steady. Hold on, Alara. This is what humanity does. And he drove them into the light. The bastion module slammed into the breach with a bone-cracking scream of tearing hulls and shearing metal. Sparks showered the corridor as deck plates buckled under the impact. Cole Mercer's vision tunneled, black edges closing in as the inertial dampeners failed completely. His harness dug into his shoulders so deep he thought it might split bone. Beside him, Alara Kent gasped, half a cry, half a laugh, as her console erupted in a final storm of static. The battered data drive was clenched tight in her glove. Through the fractured viewport, they could see it, the vast, cathedral-dark interior of the Argus. An ancient Terran hangar bay, frozen in time, row upon row of decommissioned fighters, rusted drones, the skeletal remains of a crew long turned to dust. A tomb waiting to breathe again, the bastion smoking nose wedged deep into the deck. Systems flickered and died one by one, life support first, then the flickering emergency lights, until only the faint golden glow of the Argus' internal status lights painted the ruined and bruised. Amber. Cole's breath came in ragged pulls. He unbuckled, boots scraping across the slanted deck. Alara did the same, eyes locked on him through the swirling haze of coolant vapor. Somewhere far off, muffled thuds echoed, the kill ships outside scraping at the dreadnought's hull, trying to finish the kill. They wouldn't get the chance. Cole tore open the bastion's emergency hatch with a groan of protesting metal. Cold, stale air from the Argus' ancient hangar washed over them. Dead air recycled for decades, waiting for human lungs to claim it again. Can you walk? Cole rasped. Lara nodded, even though her knees wobbled. She pressed the data drive into his palm. Her gloved fingers lingered for a heartbeat too long. He understood. If he fell, she'd finish the run. If she fell, he'd crawl through fire. They stepped into the hangar together. The Argus felt like a cathedral turned battlefield. Ghost lights flickering down broken catwalks. Shadows of half-gutted ships waiting for orders that never came. Their footsteps echoed off metal, older than either of them had ever known. Cole could almost hear the voices of the old fleet, the songs they must have sung when they believed Earth's sky was theirs forever. A sudden hiss made him freeze. Figures stepped from the shadows, shapes moving with the quiet, liquid grace of old combat drones. Not Kelleran, not quite human either. Custodian automatons, skeletal machines clad in faded Terran insignia. They raised their arms, targeting optics blinking alive in the half-light. Alara inhaled sharply. Friend or foe, the closest custodian. Step forward. Vox speaker crackling with a voice filtered through a century of degraded code. Terran asset. Identified. Present command key. Cole held up the data drive. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then the custodian reached out a skeletal arm, gently taking the drive in his metal claw. It slotted the ancient chip into its chest port. Lights flickered in sequence, spreading like a vein of fire across the hangar walls. Sirens, silent for decades, grown awake. Bulkheads unfolded. Ancient conduits hung with new power. Somewhere deep in the bowels of the dreadnought, a massive reactor heart pulsed to life. The first true heartbeat the Argus had felt in a generation. Command accepted, the custodian intoned. Reactivation cycle engaged. Alara's eyes shone in the golden gloom. It's waking up. Outside, the Argus armored plating rippled, segment by segment. Gun reports eye rising open like the eyes of a vast machine serpent. The kill ships latched onto the hull suddenly found themselves facing old siege cannons that burned hotter than any Kelleran science could comprehend. Inside, the deck rumbled under their boots, a deep, predatory growl of fusion cores spooling up. Cole turned to Alara, voice trembling with exhaustion and disbelief. We did it. A sudden boom threw them both to the deck. The distant bulkhead ahead of them imploded inward, an impact charge breaching the hangar from the exterior. Cold, green lights spilled through the breach. Silhouettes followed, Kelleran killbreeds. Claws flexing, eyes burning through the haze. Alara scrambled to her feet, wrenching a sidearm from her belt. Cole pushed himself upright, plasma carbine, still dangling from his back, half fried, but maybe good for one more shot. One of the killbreeds hissed, a sound like knives scraping glass. Cole stepped in front of Alara. His voice was low, steady. Get to the core. Finish the override. She shook her head, eyes bright with fury. Not without you. But there was no time left to argue. The first Kelleran charged, faster than thought. Cole swung the carbine up, squeezed the trigger. The bolt lanced through the alien's throat, blew his head apart in a gout of white fluid. He felt claws rake across his arm in the same breath, pain flaring like a sunburst. He staggered, but stayed on his feet. More shapes spilled into the hangar, an endless tide. Thorne's last transmission hissed through the dying Bastion link. Cole, do it. Light. Hurry up. Cole locked eyes with Alara, saw the question in them, the plea, the stubborn refusal to leave him behind. He only managed a ragged grin. Go. He rasped, we wake the galaxy or we die ghosts. She hesitated, just long enough to brush her fingers along his cheek, then bolted for the core conduit. He turned back to the breach, carbine whining as its final charge built. Around him, the Argus stirred, ancient guns aligning, reactor cores humming, battle cannons finding their mark. Outside, the kill ships fired, but now, the dreadnought fired back out, and inside its beating heart, Cole Mercer braced for the storm. Cole Mercer's world shrank to the muzzle of his dying carbine and the boiling dark beyond the breach. The Kelleran killbreeds spilled through the ragged hole like liquid nightmares, bone-white armor catching the flicker of the Argus' half-revived battle lights. They hissed in unison, claws flexing, jaws splitting to reveal rows of needle teeth that dripped acid onto the deck. Behind him, the dreadnought's ancient fusion heart thrummed louder with each pulse. Somewhere deeper in his iron veins, Alara, Ken ran, the last ember clutched in her palm, driving it into the ship's core like a blade through the galaxy's throat. Cole raised his carbine, the power cell blinking its final breath. He fired. The bolt tore through the lead killbreed's chest, flaring bright blue as it burned clean through the back. The alien staggered, shrieked, but didn't fall. It lunged anyway. Cole ducked low, shoulder crashing into its midsection. Bone met battered armor. He felt teeth rake along his neck plate. Too close. He shoved the beast back just as the carbine sputtered dead in his hand, a relic finally spent. Another hiss behind him, claws scraping deck steel. Cole turned, grabbed a fallen plasma torch from the ruined bastion hatch, thumbed the igniter. The arc blade flared to life with the crackle of ozone. The next killbreed charged. Cole roared, driving the torch up through the thing's jaw, out the back of its skull. It thrashed, acid spitting across his visor, burning lines into the cracked glass dot through the haze. He glimpsed them, more Kelleran pushing through the breach, armored like walking coffins, pincers flicking for flesh. Cole stumbled back, torch-spitting arcs in every direction. He had seconds at best, maybe less. Then a sound thundered through the hangar, deep enough to shake the frost from the Argus bones. A voice died. It wasn't human, exactly, but it carried the cadence of Earth's lost warlords, filtered through 100 years of buried code and failing memories. It boomed through the walls, shaking rivets loose. Terran Dreadnought Argus online. The custodian drones shivered awake in their alcoves, optics burning like miniature suns. They stepped forward in tight ranks, carbon fiber blades folding from hidden sheaths. Cole fell back behind the first line as the custodians met the Kelleran in a collision of steel. A bone dot machine and monster clashed, sparks and acid hissed. The custodians fought without fear, without mercy, perfect soldiers, who would never again taste sleep or forgiveness. Above it all, the Argus main spinal guns rotated into position. Through the cracked viewport behind the breach, Cole glimpsed the kill ships outside, cloud shadows weaving tight orbits, plasma lances warming for the final kill. But now the dreadnought's spine burned gold, gathering fire older than the Kelleran Empire itself. Deep in the hangar, a side door burst open. Alara stumbled through, chest heaving, face streaked with sweat and blood. She saw Cole through the chaos, raised her hand, the data drive gone. In its place, the Argus reactor now glowed with raw, pulsing life. "You did it," Cole croaked through the battered comm. In his visor, Alara laughed, a sound half wild, half feral, all human. "It's awake, Mercer. It remembers us." The custodian line faltered. A kill breed broke through, barreling toward Alara. Cole moved without thought, hurling himself forward. He caught the alien low, tackling it into the deck. Its claws raked his side. Fire burst under his ribs. He didn't feel pain, only the cold certainty that if he let go, it would end her. He screamed into its face, forcing the plasma torch under its neck plates. The arc flared. The thing shrieked, then went still, legs kicking once before falling. Cole rolled off, gasping, the world spinning in dull red pulses. He felt Alara's hands dragging him back behind the custodian ranks, somewhere above. The Argus voice boomed again, steady now, hungry now. Primary targets acquired. Hostile fleet locked. Outside, the Kelleran kill ships veered, sensing. Too late, what was about to come. Defensive plasma flickered harmlessly against the dreadnought's armored hide. The spinal guns finished charging, coils glowing like the heart of a dying star. Alara clutched Cole's faceplate, eyes burning through tears and grime. "Hold on, Mercer. We're not ghosts. Not today." Cole tried to grin, but tasted only blood. "Let them up." The Argus obeyed. A blinding lance of golden fusion energy ripped through the void. Catching the lead kill ship mid-turn, the blast sheared it apart, scattering molten fragments into the next wave. Another cannon roared, a Kelleran carrier, vaporized in a wash of fire so bright it painted the graveyard gold. All around the dreadnought, ancient gun batteries barked like thunder. Boarding pods shredded before they touched hull. Kill breeds inside the breach shrieked and burned under custodian blades and deck-mounted coilguns that sprang from hidden recesses. In that storm of sound and light, Cole felt his limbs grow heavy, felt the warmth of Alara's hands as she braced him against her armor. Around them, the Argus roared its defiance at a galaxy that had forgotten Earth could bite. Cole's voice cracked through the haze. "They'll run." Alara pressed her forehead to his cracked visor. Let them remember." Outside, the Kelleran swarm broke, scattered like insects under a torch. The last kill ships turned tail, engines burning green trails into the deep. What had come to erase the last Terran ember fled before a ghost given flesh and fury, and inside that reborn metal giant, Cole Mercer let his eyes drift shut, a heartbeat away from oblivion, but alive enough to know the Argus would roar long after he was gone. The Kelleran swarm fled into the drifting graveyard, a cloud of green light dissolving into the cold. Some tried to cloak, some to fold away on half-broken slip drives. It didn't matter. The Argus hunted them with the precision of an old predator reborn. One by one, beams of golden fire stitched through the wreck field, snuffing out the last claws that had come to silence Earth's ghost. Inside the dreadnought's iron heart, the ancient engines throbbed with new life, power. Conduits hum, feeding lost circuits starved for decades. Reactor heat banished the tomb-cold air. Hallway lights, dead since the siege, flickered on in sequence, warm, steady, defiant. In the hangar, among the dead custodians and burned kill breeds, Alara knelt by Cole Mercer's side. She'd torn off her helmet, hair matted to her. Brow, hands slick with blood. His blood, hers, the enemy's, all of it the same color now. Cole's breathing was ragged, chest plate dented where the kill breed's claws had torn through. But he was alive. Barely. She leaned close so her whisper wouldn't get swallowed by the groaning hull. You're not dying. Mercer. Not after this. He cracked a dry smile, teeth stained red. Little busy, bleeding out. Elara's laugh, cracked to edge with tears. She pressed her palm to his cheek, feeling the last warmth in him. Stay with me. Stay with us. Around them, the custodians moved like silent monks, carrying scrap metal, sealing breaches, welding torn. Bulkheads. They worked with unthinking devotion, following ancient code that said, if the dreadnought breathes, humanity breathes. Far overhead, the Argus voice rolled through the decks, calm, deep. Alive again. Hostile forces neutralized. Slip space. Reactor stabilizing. Core command awaiting orders. Cole turned his head toward the booming voice. Throat raw. Orders. Elara leaned closer. What is it? He stared at the cracked ceiling. Through the fracture, he glimpsed the stars beyond, sharp and cold. Once they'd mocked Earth's children with empty promises. Now they trembled under a single name. Broadcast. Cole rasped. Wideband. Open the old fleet channels. Elara hesitated, then grabbed a nearby custodian, keyed the uplink on its shoulder panel. Static flooded the hangar for a breath, then cleared. 1,000 fractured signals stitched back together by the Argus ancient mind. Cole coughed blood, but forced the words out. Words he hadn't known he'd been carrying all this time, too. Any Terran out there, any drifter, colony rat, orbital scavenger. This is Cole Mercer aboard the dreadnought Argus. His voice was raw iron scraping rust. They thought we were dead. They thought we'd forget who we are. He felt Elara's hand tighten on his. She was crying openly now, but she didn't look away. They were wrong. Cole said, we remember. We're coming home. The signal carried, fracturing through the graveyard's debris, leaping from ancient convoys to hidden relay. Drones that had slept for decades, out beyond the black halo. Flickers of static danced through long-dead channels, in secret bunkers on asteroid outposts. Huddled families heard the voice, in half-buried data vaults on Luna's far side, old. Resistance cells stirred awake. The Argus engines pulsed, a sound like a dragon's breath rolling through the void. Its whole plate shifted, realigning for a course long abandoned. Inside, Elara bent lower, brushing Cole's hair back from his sweat-cold forehead. You did it, Mercer. You did it. He forced his eyes open, saw not the hangar's ruin, but the memory of a blue earth he'd never truly known, oceans, wind, a sky that didn't choke its children, a promise bigger than any war. Tell Thorn. He whispered, voice fading. Tell him we didn't. Surrender. Elara's tears fell onto his cheek, warm where everything else was cold. You'll tell him yourself. But Cole's eyes drifted shut, lips parting in a slow exhale that sounded almost like a laugh. Around them, the dreadnought made ready. The custodians filed into formation. Silent sentinels beside Elara as she held Cole's limp hand. On the main deck above, the old war banners, dusty tatters of Earth's fleet colors, unfurled under the warm hum of resurrected lights. Outside the viewport, the stars seemed to wait. With quiet ceremony, Elara rose. She pressed her hand to the bulkhead, feeling the Argus answer. A hum that vibrated through her bones like a heartbeat passed down generations. She spoke softly, a promise and a warning carried on the last breath of a dying soldier. Remember, U.S., we're coming back. The Argus turned its prow toward the dark, engines rumbling low. Slip space coils spinning up, somewhere, across 1,000 hidden outposts and buried bunkers. Human eyes opened. Rusted weapons were dusted off. Ancient codes whispered awake. The galaxy that had once crushed Earth now felt the first tremor of what it meant to fail. And as the old dreadnought slipspace drives flared gold, splitting the black with the roar of Terran defiance, the last human whisper carried out among the stars. Now, the stars carry our name.